What's going on? This is Richie Contretassi with the Next Play podcast, and today we have a very special guest by the name of Colton Brazier, someone who's owned an insurance agency for 2 years, has been in the business for 8, right?
That's right. Yeah.
8 years. But more importantly than all of that, has also been on Family Feud, which is very interesting.
The true measure of success.
Seriously, what was that experience like?
Dude, it was awesome. It was great. I mean, it's really surreal because you go down and you do your audition like six months, or it's probably almost a year in advance. And we've watched the show. I feel like my family and I are, we can be real showy. So we knew what to do during the audition. Things went really well. Then you don't hear from them for a while, and then you get this little postage or this postcard in the mail saying that you get there. And then going like the back end. So they shoot at like Universal in Los Angeles, and it was cool. It's cool to meet Steve Harvey, all that good stuff, and we had a blast.
Dang, that's all. Did you win?
No.
No.
We should have won. I prematurely hit the buzzer on mine like a fool. And they tell you like 9 times in the beginning of the meeting. They're like, just don't listen to the whole question before you hit the buzzer. But I just got too excited. I was like, I know this one. But yeah, we lost in a sudden death, so we were close. But no, we lost.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, man, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Joe, what's up, man? Thanks for the comment. Listen, for everyone watching, if you have questions, make sure to comment. And, I'll make sure to throw them up on the screen. We'll get them answered as always. But Colton, let's get right into it, man, because everyone watching wants to get into the nuts and bolts, meat and potatoes. So how did you get started building your insurance agency?
So I had worked with a State Farm office in Scottsdale, Arizona when I was living down there. I had a buddy who was involved and is doing the same thing. And I just liked the idea of having a career where I was running my own business, but with a support system that was like a behemoth, like State Farm. So I got into that back, about 8 years ago, transitioned into funeral sales, but always gravitated towards like the management stuff. I liked doing the sales management stuff because I think, at least when I graduated college, I was kind of at a crossroads of a whole list of things I wanted to do. I was like physical therapy, maybe. And then I was like, maybe I could do teaching, or maybe I could do sales. And I just felt the agency opportunity was the one that encapsulated both the sales and the teaching aspect, because you get a team, you get to watch them progress. You get to, lay out your expectations and see those things come to like make made manifest just due to the coaching that you're providing for them. And I tell you, that's my favorite part of being an agency owner. Like, I love being a salesman too. I've always loved connecting with people in that way, but seeing my team do that is like so much, it's just so much better. And it's so much nicer to be like, sweet, I'm getting paid for them doing well. So.
Right. Nice. Okay, cool. So so basically sales leadership has just always been something that you've enjoyed and has been a passion.
Correct. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, cool, man. So tell us about your agency today, where, 2 years. What does it look like today?
2 years, man. So we're in Boise, Idaho. It's going great today. I've got 5 employees currently. And they're just the best group I've ever had. We're growing a lot. We're, as far as like ranking and like our territories go, we're always towards the top, which I'm really proud of. We've been able to, hit a lot of the goals that State Farm has for, travel, things like that. So, continue to grow and just trying to make ourselves a little bit more known in the community. And it's nice to see you kind of start turning a corner, depending on how you're marketing yourself locally. You start to see yourself turn a corner as far as like recognition, and so that's been great. I think we're in a really good spot location wise. And then just, we like getting active and getting out in the community and, putting our names out there. So it's going great. It's been excellent.
Dude, that's awesome. So I always like asking this question, like what worked for you in the beginning when you were first building your agency? Because I assume, was it just you? Like how did you go from you to, 5?
Yeah, great question. Because, I always I love hearing that too, as far as like what worked for you when you first started, because it's definitely the hardest part. I think it's reminding yourself of what we call like lagging or leading indicators versus lagging indicators. There's like videos about this stuff all the time, but it's basically giving yourself a list of goals, not an overwhelming amount of goals every day on practical things that you're able to complete, and then just trusting that process that it's going to work out on the back end. So, one thing I think that a lot of new agents do is they spread themselves real thin, where they're the ones making they're basically helping out on all of the service tasks that come out in the insurance agency, or they're their number one salesperson. They're the only ones who are selling life insurance. That happens a lot because people want to control all those aspects because that's what you're measured on. But if you instead intentionally take time to teach your team every day, you should be like, well, you know what, like, it might feel like this is being redundant, but I'm going to go over this with them at least a half hour. That's when it starts to, again, take care of itself. And that I learned probably 6 months in, just because I felt like the burnout. I imagine most agents feel that way the first year because it's a brutal job, man. Like, it's a lot of work, and you can get caught up in the stress of everything and of seeing it, because you start out low and then of course it starts to build up, and the benefit is that renewal build up. But if you don't have a map as far as like what you want to be, it's really difficult to make it through those first couple of months. So just making sure you know exactly where you want to be, and then taking those small incremental steps every day that you can hang your hat on at the end of the day. I think that it was the most important for me when I was starting out.
Yeah. What made those first 3 months so difficult, and what did you do to overcome them?
You've got to learn a lot of stuff, because as the agent, I worked as a team member for an agent in Arizona, as I mentioned. And if a question came up, I can go to him. And he's the one who had the experience. He's the one who kind of knew how to resolve an underwriting issue or help out with a certain claim. But when you're the agent, you're the resource. And, as much support as you get, it's still like you're thrown into it. You just got to do your thing. And it's nice to have a company like State Farm where they have resources to help you through some of that stuff. But that's the stressful part, is constantly having conversations with people where you have to be like, let me get back to you because I don't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
But like owning that and owning it in a genuine way, I think was really helpful for me, because when I tried to mask my deficiencies, or not my deficiencies, but my lack of knowledge on certain products or on certain situations, that's when I felt like the stress of the job would really weigh on me, because I'm like, I'm biting off more than I can chew without telling myself that, there is a process of learning this stuff. So I think that was the hardest thing. And so as soon as I realized, like, it's just better to be transparent with people about what you do know and what you don't. Like, you don't have to be self-deprecating and be like, I'm new, I don't know what I'm doing. But just, tell them, hey, this is what I'm going to do, just so you have an action plan of where we're going to correct this situation. But understand that it might take a little bit for us to figure this out. Once we got there, I think I was able to connect with people in a more real way, instead of based on what their expectations were. Because with State Farm, with other insurance companies, you inherit, a book of business from like a retired agent in some cases. And, that was the case for me. And they have an expectation of how things needed to be done. But this was based on somebody who had like 30 years of experience and a way bigger staff. So, there's a big learning curve with that, because there's those expectations that come up. You feel like you're inadequate because you're not helping them the way they're thinking they need to be helped. But just being honest with yourself, being transparent with them, and then taking intentional time to learn an actual thing every day, that's what helped me to kind of get through those rough months and to grow into, I guess, more confident version of myself.
Nice. I like that, man. Someone actually, James Miller here had a good comment. I had to laugh. He goes, focusing on the smaller tasks daily, I know that the bigger roles will come. Some might say focusing on the next place. I like it. All right, James. Good stuff, man. Good to see you, brother. No, super true, man. And I think that's good. So, like, how did you get the ball rolling? Did you purchase leads and make phone calls? Like, how in the beginning, walk me through how you started getting clients.
Yeah, I've always liked internet leads myself, just because you have opportunity, and you have, again, like I mentioned, you have like a built-in, I guess, goal, contact all these internet leads, quote all these internet leads. So that's primarily where my business started out with. And then I also made sure I made it a goal to at least monthly get out and do something in the community, even if it was something really small, like visiting local apartments or something like that, just to get my name out there. One is it helps again with that recognition, but two is just you're just building relationships, and it's good for you to get reinforced that like, hey, like these little things that I do can yield sales down the road. Because I think you need that positive reinforcement when you're making that investment. And so that's the beauty of internet leads, is just that it's a numbers game. So if you're constantly calling, you're working on your craft as far as you're pitching to folks, things will fall into place. So that was always good to have that as the bread and butter. Then also just to be intentional about other strategies. And so with that was, again, as mentioned, the local marketing, but also just establishing a good referral program and just making sure that you're referable. You know what I mean? Like you're working hard enough, you're connecting with these people on a real level to where they're going to tell their friends about you. You know what I mean? And yeah, so that's, I think, what in the beginning, it was nice to have that, just those tasks to do as far as internet leads go, but then it also helped me just to shape it.
Were you buying those leads, or were you running Facebook ads, or
I
were
was
you doing
buying them? There's lead vendors all over, and so I was buying a bunch of internet leads. Yeah.
Okay. Were you doing like the high-end exclusive where they would transfer the phone call to you, or are you buying old leads in the beginning? Like what type were you buying in the beginning?
I was buying, so I bought kind of your standard ones where people were going and they were actively online, so they weren't aged leads. I found that those ones for the price were the best value because, the close rate on them, it might still be low, like in like the 10 to 20%, but it was better than old leads where like sometimes the phone number was disconnected. You get a whole bunch of them, but you got to really burn through a lot of phone calls to do that. And so it's a good practice for your new team members or your new employees, just to get comfortable with that as far as like the amount of dials that they have to make the sales. But we just did the standard ones. And then the warm transfer calls, a little bit more expensive, but definitely worth it. It just depends on the vendor, though. The vendor I was using, I didn't love, so we didn't do that. We didn't continue to do that. But, it's nice just I think it helped my employees to feel less like grunts when it was a transferred phone call, because it's like, oh, I'm having a sales conversation right now, instead of, all right, let me try dial number 50 something, or let me try to keep going today. And, but that's part of it. And I think that's, you just got to recognize that like part of this job comes with that consistent effort. Like it's a grind, and, making sure that when you get the opportunity and you're in front of somebody, that you're maximizing that, because from that maximized conversation, or from that conversation where you're asking people about referrals, where you're asking them what they do for work, you're finding other opportunities that will help to organically grow your business, instead of having to do it this old way, or this difficult way of internet lead calling all day. So, yeah.
Do you still do that today? Do your sales? Okay.
I'm honestly going to do internet leads probably for forever, because I like them. I think it's something that it keeps you busy. You never run out of things to do if you have internet leads. There's a lot of them. So.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, so what's worked for you with internet? Like a lot of people get internet leads, they don't have luck with them. And I think we both know it's you gotta dial.
100%.
So what's worked for you when it comes to internet leads? Like how have you been able to convert when others haven't?
For me, it's been intentional about, of course, the amount that you're putting out. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're not getting sales and you're doing 40 dials a day, like make more dials, or if there's certain times of the day that you're calling internet leads and it's not working out, change that up tomorrow. So just making sure you schedule out times where you're intentionally trying to burn through some of those. But then just slowing yourself down. Like I had a little Post-it, and I had to put this on some of my team members' desks of like, slow down when we're in a conversation. Because what happens often is you get into that mindset of like, just dial, and then someone picks up and you're like, oh crap, someone's on the phone. And then you kind of like, you're in such like an autopilot state that it's hard for you to interact with that person as a person. You know what I mean? And I think that's what helps the most when it comes to success with like the actual conversations on internet leads, is just like asking them actual questions, making sure your personality is shining through for it, and then just differentiating yourself in that way. At least that's why I think that like our office has had success with it. We have like that's one thing I go for with employees is people who are just, I can tell are genuine. Like, that's what matters when you're on the phone with somebody who's like asking you these questions, explaining to you why they're asking you these questions. I think that's what helped us to at least have a better closing rate on those.
Got it. Okay, cool. Today, do you run any type of like inbound lead form system through social media or anything, or you just referrals and purchasing leads?
I am just referrals and purchasing leads, honestly. Yeah.
Nice.
I
Okay,
like the
cool.
Facebook marketing stuff has been working for some. And so we're kind of going into that route now with one of our marketing vendors, but we'll see how it goes,
Kind of playing around. Okay.
Yeah, like my Facebook and Instagram posts are funny because I have them for my business, but like the only people who like them are my mom or like my friends from back
Right.
home. So I'm like, I don't know how much this is helping, but it might help eventually.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Facebook's tough because like I think they're actually pushing the pages now.
Yeah.
Again, where you can get organic traffic. Like if you have a business page on Facebook, like for the longest, it's been you have to do paid ads to get any traction on them.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I understand it, but yeah, it's just, I don't know if it's worth the investment at this point. It might be, but I don't know.
Yeah. All right, cool. So talk to me about how you went from yourself dialing and then to building your team. How did you go about doing that?
Yeah. So I basically like the first year, and things have changed now. But State Farm, you're kind of under a temporary contract your first year. You kind of like your prove it year. Like, hey, can you sell, this much in life insurance or this much in auto or whatever it may be. And so I was like my best team member in those lines of business. I was constantly, calling internet leads and doing that. And then I just got really tired because I was just like, this isn't fun. It's taking me all day. And it's, it's constant rejection, which is fine. But it's just when it's just you, it's like it's hard to see an end game or it's hard to see that this is going to be scalable. So I was meeting with like my sales leader and she was just like, you don't need to be doing this stuff. Like you need to be teaching people to do this for you and then let them, take the ball and grow the thing. And so I had to like intentionally step back and just made sure I outlined like clear expectations for what they need to do on a daily basis. This is the amount of dials you need to do. These are the amount of quotes you need to do. This is what it's going to lead to. And if we're not getting these numbers, then we're going to adjust these other leading indicators that we're performing. So it took a little bit to like, I don't know, man. It was finding the right team though. So like when I say, like I stepped back and I definitely made that like a big intentional thing last year. So after my first year, I was like, you know what? Like I need to not be producing as much. And I stepped back, but I feel like once I hired one team member in particular still with me, I mean, she just completely dominated it and was able to kind of like show me the light of like, this is what being an agency owner is about. It's not about being the best salesperson there. It's about being a resource to teach them new practices, to help them to be the best salespeople, and then to make sure that you have clear outlined expectations so that they can follow those things and grow the business for you. And so, yeah, it was a matter of seeing that from her that really just kind of solidified like, okay, this needs to be my process moving forward. Because I always had like in my head, like, this is going to be a grind for 5 years and then I'll do that. Like once I've got this all figured out, once I have a team member who's been with me for a while, I'll offload a lot of this stuff onto them. But the more I've stepped back, the more we've produced as an office. So I'm like, okay, like maybe this is it. Like if I get a call in, I don't need to take it. They'll take it. You know what I mean? And just trust your team to do that. And if you don't trust them, teach them more so that you trust them. But yeah, so that's kind of what I learned with that one.
I like it. Setting expectations and all that.
We might have a visitor. Sorry.
No,
it's like that
cool.
one like British news guy.
Yeah. Oh my God, dude. Where he had like, the family.
That girl like strolling in.
Yeah. No, that was funny, man. How old?
She's 2, and then I've got a 6-year-old. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Definitely
pretty exciting.
Yeah. No, that's good, man. So I'm curious, like, how do you go about finding your agents?
That's a great question because I think that's the most important thing. I use I'm trying to think what it would be. It's like a website that launches your job postings out on like multiple things like Indeed, ZipRecruiter, all those good ones. And then I just interview a lot, and I make sure that I'm posting like I've gotten a lot on Facebook, and then I try to connect. So in Boise, of course, there's Boise State. I reached out to them because they have this. There's career fairs that I haven't really utilized, but there's also like job postings you can do directly on the university's website.
Yeah.
And so I always love doing that because you get a lot of those finance students that are interested in learning about that type of a business, and they'll do like internships with you, even if it's part-time. So I do that, and I just make sure I'm always looking to hire, always. And if there is somebody, even if I'm like fully staffed as far as like what our budget allows, I'm still going to hire the people that are like exceptional. It's like, I forgot who it was. It was one of the NFL coaches. I think it was like Sean Payton or something that said like, if you're ever going to draft a quarterback who's undersized, they better be a unicorn or else it's not going to be worth your investment. And so like, that's kind of like my logic of when I'm fully staffed, I'm still going to interview because if I find that unicorn, I'm still bringing them on. You know what I mean?
So you're
like,
always interviewing then.
Always.
Do you constant, like how often are you posting the job opportunity?
All the time. Yeah, I post like 10 jobs just because like I want to get as many opportunities out there as possible, or as many applicants as possible.
How much of your time are you spending interviewing? I love this. I'm just curious, like how.
Not a ton. I'd say probably like 2 a week like on average. So it's not a ton, but I'll do like a phone interview and an initial one. If they're good over the first interview, I'll bring them in for an in-person interview. And it's good practice with the team too, because I have them involved in that process. Like, so I do my phone interview, I do a one-on-one interview, and then I bring them back for a team interview, and I just have them kind of like pick their brains. And so I want the team to feel involved in that process because they very much are. And then, again, like if it's like a slam dunk for me and for them, those are the ones where I'm like, okay, you know what? We're taking the investment. We'll see what we can do as far as affording this. But, usually it always works out. That's what I found is like, even if you overhire, if it's the right people, it's going to work out.
Right. No, for sure. I really like that. So you got 5 people on your team right now. How have you structured your agency to be the most efficient that it can be? So if someone's sitting there, they're starting to hire, they've got a couple, like how have you structured your agency?
Still learning that, but I think I landed on something that's pretty comfortable now. So, you have to, of course, have licenses when you're doing your insurance sales. And it used to be a requirement for me before I brought them in to be fully licensed in property, casualty, life, and health. And then we'd start you. I don't do that anymore. I have them do like introductions where they come in just for a few hours a day just to kind of like learn the process. But now what I do is I actually have somebody who is my office administrator who's actually unlicensed. And basically her job is to take payments and to set expectations for like when certain things are going to be done. So, and then I have my sales staff. And I feel like just having that set up has been really helpful for us because we're not getting overwhelmed by like the service calls. Because it was always the worst feeling when you're on kind of like a roll or you're trying to really make these sales and you get a call that's involved in like a servicing of a policy and it takes, hours away from your day. So that's worked well. And then just making sure that we rotate as like the sales staff, because there's always going to be those days where just, our office administrator's on the phone and somebody walks in and then there's like multiple calls of the same person. So we rotate certain times for the sales staff that they're the backup of the service calls, because I want everyone to know how to do everything in case I ever step out or in case somebody's out sick, that we don't lose a beat, like we don't skip a beat. But that's helped a lot, is just having a designated service person just on the front end, but then everybody else having service slots to help out on the back end in case she gets, taken out.
And everyone else is basically an agent.
Exactly. Yeah. The rest of them are producing, they're prospecting, they're trying to grow, their sales and stuff like that.
Got it. Cool. And so do you have them purchase their own leads, or do you like you do it all for them?
Yeah, I buy them all. Yeah. So they're like, the way it's set up is, I'm a 1099 with State Farm, and then they're my employees. So it's my office will produce the internet leads for them, and then they'll just they'll go hunting for them.
Got it. So you go the route of W-2. So your team
Yep.
members are all W-2. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like that. All right,
Pretty
good.
exciting.
What made you go that route?
Honestly, well, so part of it is because with State Farm structure, I think you have to, but
Okay.
there's like ways that you can kind of play around with it. But I also just liked, like with a lot of the first time salespeople, at least the ones that I'm recruiting, it's their first job. So having a backbone of like an hourly wage for them plus the commission, I think is just, it's more, I guess, like user friendly in the first couple months when you're trying to learn the thing.
For sure.
It's a really intimidating job to go in if you're just solely 1099 and it's like, we're just going to pay you commission, but you're not going to sell for the first 3 months,
Right.
So I think that was part of it, but also that was just the way it was done at the other office I worked at. So I'm like, yeah, I'll just do that. That works.
I like it. Okay, cool. So what are you focusing on now to like, are you wanting to grow your agency even more? Do you plan on having like hundreds of agents? Like what's your vision for what you're doing?
Yeah, that's honestly the goal. Like my goal, I want to make sure that I'm always growing at like the same rate we've been growing. So like, just hopefully every 2 years, like doubling in size of like what we were at, or being on pace to do that. And then growing as far as like, I'm always like for the end of this year, I want to have at least 2 more team members and then get to a point where I have enough service reps to where that's all streamlined and taken care of. And then enough sales to be able to just like focus on the growth of that. And then I'd love to open up like another office. Like State Farm gives you an option to open up multiple offices. And that's the goal, is to open up more and just continue to grow and make that money.
Nice. I like it. Good stuff, man. What about technology? Like what technology softwares are you using that that you're having a lot of success with that's helping your team, from power dialers to CRM to, like where are you getting, like what's your sources to get the best leads? Like what softwares and stuff are you using to be more efficient and
So like technology size, and I'm honestly probably not the one to ask about it because I'm like, I just kind of use the stuff they give me, So like State Farm, they've got corporate sponsorships, I assume, with a lot of those companies. They have like an ECRM type of like customer management page. Like Outlook calendars, like Microsoft Outlook calendar is great because you can use the calendar just to make sure you're staying on task with things and you just get those reminders. As far as like other technology I'm using, some of the vendors I use for internet leads, like EverQuote, Quote Wizard, I've had success with those ones. It's just like quantity thing. They're reasonable and they seem to yield a consistent amount of sales for us. I think that's like kind of the main thing. And then also just like Excel sheets, like making as many Excel sheets as you can.
Is that what you're doing? Is that where you're keeping like all your leads and everything? Is mainly
that's where I like track our growth. You know what I mean? And so like just to make sure that we're, every month we're hitting the goals, but everything's issuing properly. It's just a great place to double check a lot of the stuff that you're doing. And State Farm and other companies will have resources like that to do it, but I just like to have my own personal one just because it's, it's nice to be familiar with your own layout.
Right. No, I like that. So as far as like leadership, obviously, people that are growing their agencies, that's a very important skill set, right? Of being able to lead not only salespeople, but people in general. Yeah. So do you have like a system that you use, and let's just stay on the sales side for now for managing? I know you said you have some expectations and you're looking at their numbers. Like what have you found that's worked really well for you when it comes to sales leadership? Do you have like a process that you follow of some sort, or what does that kind of look like?
I'd say the thing that's made me successful, or that I feel will help anybody, is just be authentic. My personality type, I'm not the type of I'm trying to think of like the word, but like the real strict type of leader that's like, hey, like, why don't you do this? Like I like those tough conversations. I have them, but I have them in a more conversational kind of friendly way. That's just my personality, you know? And so I remember being like, I was in like a leadership role at one of like the sales companies I worked at before. And, you know, someone told me that like, hey, you know, sometimes you gotta be a little bit more stern. You gotta do this. And like for the longest time, like when I first opened up my agency, I'm like, yeah, that's how I have to do it. But I was always so uncomfortable with it. And the team did not respond well to it because I wasn't being like authentic. You know what I mean? So I think being confident in what you actually bring to the table, I feel like I connect with my team better than any other agent. Like honestly, in the area, I feel like everyone, like we all get along great, and it's just because like I don't know, I'm transparent with how I am with them. I explain like why certain things might be issues, and just like kind of meet them at their level instead of I'm always above you. This is kind of how things go. But again, it's just your personality type. I imagine you've met those people who are like, you know, like some people are just like, they're like football guys, you know, like where it's like, absolutely, they can have this conversation, have no problem. And like, or like they have like that military mindset of like, if there's a problem, I'll correct it this way and then it'll be good. But that's just never been my strength. So I just kind of steered in to what I do well, which I think is just connecting on somebody in like more of a friend way. And then just kind of holding myself accountable to making sure that they understand their expectations and I kind of let them do themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. How often do you do that? Do you do like, you know, team outings where you know, review their expectations,
Oh,
or do you do that like frequently, or?
We do it daily, man. Like, and we do it to a small degree daily as far as like, hey, like how many people are we asking about life insurance? You know, instead of it just being focused on like, are we hitting this goal? We break it down on a daily basis. How many people are we going to ask? You know, like 10's always the goal. And so we have to write down like who actually is doing that. So my office is set up in a way where it's a bullpen where like everybody, all the salespeople are sitting real close to each other. I've got my office, but I always come out and I just check in with them. And so those little interactions, like at first I thought like I was just distracting them. But the more I found it is like, the more it's actually, I think it actually really helps to kind of just build that camaraderie, like that unity of what, like we're going after a common goal. So we do that daily. And then we have intentional one-on-one meetings. I want to have them weekly, but the hard part is it comes up pretty often that like those get interrupted, but just making sure you're holding yourself to at least a weekly meeting on a one-on-one basis where you can actually pick their brain, what's going on, like what's going well for you right now, what are some struggles you're running into, and then having an intentional thing you're going to coach them about. That I feel has been the best. And then having a team meeting at least once a week, you know, just to go over those goals. This is where we're at. Yeah.
Awesome. How did you come to that? Like, is that something that you just kind of created on your own, or like?
I borrow it from a bunch of people. I feel like I just steal stuff, but we have the agent I worked for in Scottsdale, like the hardest worker I've ever met. Like he was very structured in that way. And I always like really appreciated the one-on-one time that we would do together. So I'm like, I definitely need to do that because not every agent does that. You know, some agents are just like, you do your own thing. This is your business too. Like, I'll check in with you if things go wrong, but like kind of keep to yourself. But I always liked that. I always liked that one-on-one time because, you know, it's like kind of like, you know, I don't know. It's just like it's like having one-on-one time with your kids. You know, like they know that you love them. They're into it. They're bought into the business, and they rally around that type of unity. So that's kind of where I picked that part of it up. And then just the team meetings from, you know, previous sales jobs, the same thing. Like I want them to not feel like they're on an island. You know, I want them to feel like they're all working towards something. I want to celebrate the sales with everybody when somebody makes one. You know, I want to acknowledge when somebody's doing something really special so that they can teach it if somebody else has a question about it.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. Do you ever do like any type of competitions or anything like that?
Yeah, we'll do like some incentive stuff. Like I feel like my team they're just so nice that they're like, sometimes when I say like, what do you want? Like if you hit this goal, what do you want? They're always kind of like, oh, you know, whatever, you know. But like sometimes they'll do like, hey, if you sell over this many, you know, life policies, then I'll pay you some cash, or we'll go out to dinner at this place, or you can travel locally to this place or something like that. I feel like making sure you understand what they appreciate, and then just kind of like and then just making that goal, having that conversation where it's based on that reward is definitely really helpful. But yeah.
Okay, cool, man. No, this has been really good. Is there anything else that you're like, oh, this is something that's really working for me in my business that I haven't asked you?
No, man, I think I've touched on most of it. I really do feel, and this is, again, I've owned the agency for over 2 years now, but I feel like the last 8 months is when things really started clicking as far as like, I'm enjoying this a ton. I'm like, I could see this not only being my future, but like loving it. You know what I mean? And the biggest thing was team. It was just making sure that I had the right people in there that were all bought in on the same goal, and that we could just grow together. So I think that was kind of like the realization of like, this is the most important part of running a successful agency, is having a good team. So
got it. I love it. And we talked a little bit about kind of like what you want long term, but what's your next play of getting to the next level right now? Like, what are you focusing on?
Play.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm focusing on the little things. I think just making sure that every day I have something, or every month, every week, every day, I have a goal that we're working toward. And so, of course, like we want to be able to hit the incentives to travel. We want to be able to hit all that stuff, because after a couple years, the option will open up to, open up another agency. And so that's the goal there. But really just making sure that I have a repeatable process on a day-to-day basis. I think that's the most satisfying thing, because like constantly, if I'm looking too forward to, a few months, once this works out, things will be great and I'll be happy and blah, blah. I feel like that was the stuff that like, it just didn't work out for me. Because then when we would hit goals, like when we hit our goal at the end of the first year, I was just like, I'm just tired though. I don't know if I really like this, but with just having enough confidence in our day-to-day tasks, like that's what I want. Like, I just want to make sure that every day we're executing that something we're proud of, and then things will fall into place in the future. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah,
That's kind of
that's cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Colton, man, I really appreciate you being on the show. I think you shared a lot today, a lot of valuable stuff with everyone here. So with that, I don't have any additional questions for you. Usually that means that I guess I asked some pretty good questions. I hope to do that, but usually I don't. I guess I did today.
Sweet.
But that's all we got, man. So thanks so much for being on the show, and I definitely hope to have you on again in the future. Once we're at 8 or 10 or
there we go. Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
We'll document your journey, man. But thanks so much for being on the show.
Hey, thank you.
All right.